Welcome to the 2023 Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series, filmed on location at the IGFA and brought to you by Bass Pro Shops and Mako Boats. You're about to learn from teams of some of the top saltwater fishing pros, and how you really glean the most from the Saltwater Sportsman Seminar Series is listen for the little subtleties, the small things that we are doing to put together a great catch or to get a few fish when times are tough out there. So let's get right down to it and start off the Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series.
Coming to you from the IGFA in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, it's the Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series, brought to you by Bass Pro Shops and Mako Boats. Get ready, everybody. Here's George Poveromo.
Welcome to the Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series, filmed on location at the IGFA, brought to you by Bass Pro Shops, Mako Boats. The session, Flounder, or as they say in your part of the world, fluke. And it'll be very interesting. We have our northern angler versus our southern angler. We have Captain Tom Daffin from Cape May, New Jersey. And from Tampa, we have Captain Mike Goodwine. And at Destin, in the Florida Panhandle, we have Captain Gabrielle Barnes. And we should distinguish here, too, the true flounder being a right-eyed flounder is not what we're discussing. We're dealing with a left-eye flounder, which in a lot of cases, a southern flounder referred to as a fluke once you get up north. And down here, you got the Gulf flounder and, so different monikers over here. But for all intents and purposes, we're going to do the fluke, flounder, and go from there. So, Tom, I could tell you, fluke fishing up there, it's a religion.
It is.
And you can understand why it's such a popular fish in that it's accessible by so many people, any kind of size boats for the most part, coupled by some rather good eating when you do take them back. And they're not really that terribly difficult a fish to catch if you knew a few little tricks and techniques to make that happen. So very accessible fish. Now, when do you see your flounder season starting to heat up? And I'm going to sort of load you with this question too, that the times that I've done it up there, we fished out of Cape May, and it's been around box cars. You have these trains out there?
Train cars on the artificial reef sites.
Well, give me an idea of where in your area of Jersey you're going to start looking for these fish in really about what time of the year? So
our season this past year opened up the beginning of May. Mm-hmm. Well, we only really fish in the ocean for them. There's a ton of fish in the back bays, back in the creeks and whatever have you, and you can catch them in early May, no problem. Our ocean fishing, where I fish at, doesn't really start up until around the 10th of June, let's say. The water temperatures start to get up there around 65, 66 degrees, and things start happening for us. There's a lot of different areas that we'll fish, mostly out of Cape May. I'll target anything from 60 foot at the beginning of the season all the way out to as deep as 125, 130 foot towards the end of the season, which is like in September. We have artificial reef sites that we fish. We also have natural bottom that we fish, glacial runoff, which is the old grounds, which was the glacier that formed the Delaware River, Delaware Bay, and had rock deposits going out into the ocean. Let's take a trip down to Destin. And Gabrielle, when do you, or could you do this year-round in Destin, or is there certain periods where they tend to be a little bit more prominent than others?
Yeah, absolutely. You can do it year-round. But in November is when, similar thing, they start to migrate out into the Gulf to spawn. And that November through February is when we target them. You can catch them year-round, but they're spread out through the bay. So it's more of a happenstance. You catch one here, you catch one there. November is when we really start to get them in numbers out in the Gulf.
Do you see any correlation with the sizes of these fish? In other words, when they're in the bay systems, when they're really, really scattered out, are generally the same size fish that you're going to find offshore, or do you see size classes, or what?
It's pretty similar. Actually, when we catch them in the bay, usually they're good-sized fish. They're usually keepers. When they're spawning out there in the Gulf, we're catching all different sizes. Plenty of small ones and plenty of big ones.
Good. And when we come back from the commercial break, I want to talk about that inshore fishery too, when they're scattered out, which becomes a little bit more challenging to try to find and catch. And I'm assuming, and I could be wrong, that it's a lot of dock fishing involved with that, but you're going to let us know when we come back from the commercial break. You're watching the Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series. We're coming right back.
The Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series is brought to you by Simrad, Go with Simrad and go with confidence. Penn, let the battle begin. Ross, comprehensive oceanographic analysis for fishing. Mercury Outboards, go boldly. Engel, portable fridge freezers and high-performance coolers. George will be right back. Welcome back to the Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series from the IGFA in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Brought to you by Bass Pro Shops and Mako Boats. Let's get right back to George.
Welcome back to the Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series. Flounder is the topic. I'm talking to Gabrielle Barnes, who fishes out of Daffin, Florida, in the panhandle of our state, inshore in the bays. Is it mainly around docks for your best chance, or not really? Where would you find them in there?
Well, like I said, they're really spread out. So you can catch them on the docks, you can catch them on the sandy bottom right outside of a grass flat. But if you want to get a dinner and it's not between November and February, you need to get a boat with some lights on the front and go gigging them, because that's your best bet.
Boy, all between spear fishing, between electric reels and deep dropping and gigging, we're turning into a, I don't know what kind of session here, you know? It's like the wild, wild west of fishing. So let's go back in and say, well, you left the spear home and you left the lights home. We got to do it in rod and reel. What are we doing? In the bays now. I'm not going to make it easy on you until we get offshore a little bit here.
If I'm going to go target specifically in the bay for flounder, I'm going to use a 3-inch paddle tail, white paddle tail with a jig head, or a secret is those little grub lures with the pink curly tails.
Yes.
That's what we love to catch them on. Just slow hop in sandy areas near your grass beds.
Okay. The docks tend to be good. And how you tend to find a good dock if it's near somewhat of a decent drop-off, there's some decent water flow. But like snook fishing, where we're at, or even sea trout fishing, the docks that have a light on, that remain lit at night, has the potential to attract bait. And these bait, they're conditioned to come around that light every night. And when you have a source of food, you've got to figure that these flounder won't be that far behind.
I normally fish for flounder on the flats or in the shipping channel. I've never fished the dock for flounder.
We'll go back to the docks, but the shipping channel intrigues me. And okay, with the Tampa Bay ship channel, and that thing comes down, what is that, 40, 50 feet?
50 feet.
50 feet. So how do you even set up to fish for them in that channel? Are you doing a drift? And explain to me how you pull them out for that channel. Where would they be in relationship to the channel? Near the edges to where it comes off, or are they actually down deep in that channel?
They down in the very middle of it, and we look until we use the side scan and find rocks in the middle of the shipping channel. And you could use a 1-ounce knocker egg, or we call them Stewie jigs. We call them Stewie jigs. It looked like Stewie off of Family Guy with the hook set on top of it. So we use a 1-ounce Stewie jig, drop them down, and just bounce it off the bottom every now and then. And the bigger flounder in Tampa Bay is gonna come from out that shipping channel. You get up on the flats, you got the small ones.
All right, intriguing. And given that scenario, obviously you can't be fishing there when that tide is roaring. I mean, what is the right conditions that enable you to fish in that channel and to effectively give that bait enough soak time near the bottom to try to pick up one of these fish?
Because I usually fish it right before the tide stops. And we normally snapper fishing at the same time.
And I noticed that you catch a lot of big mangroves in there too.
Yes, we catch mangroves too. And in Tampa, the flounder is like a bycatch. It's like the unicorn. When we get one,
I wondered about the Tampa people. You're making fun of the Spanish mackerel. You call them dangfish over there, and you're saying the flounder's not even rated high over there?
Yeah, it's a unicorn. And then the ones in the shipping channel, when we get anything around 17 inches, that's like a trophy to us. So.
And if that comes, that's fishing that shipping channel. Is there any time of year that's more prominent than others?
During the summertime. So June, July is usually fire. So this is when the water is the hot. I don't know if it's because it's so hot. They sit in the bottom of that shipping channel on the rocks, but it's normally whenever the mangrove snapper is on fire, you could catch snapper.
All right, we're going to commercial break. We come back, I want to talk about specific rigs. We're going to go back up to Jersey, learn some of Tom's secrets and subtleties. You're watching the Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series from the IGFA. We're going to run a few commercials. We're coming right back. Don't go far.
The Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series is brought to you by Rapala, your best shot at a world record. Suffolk's, always use the best line. VNC, your expert in hooks. Williamson Lures for the pelagic playground. Starbright, blending technology with performance since 1973. George will be right back. Welcome back to the Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series from the IGFA in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Brought to you by Bass Pro Shops and Mako Boats. Let's get right back to George.
Welcome back to the Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series at the IGFA, sponsored by Bass Pro Shops and Mako Boats. Let me swing back to Gabrielle. Your peak time to fish the flounder. Let's talk about where you're doing it, the time of the year, and how would you get set up to do that? Without prongs and spears.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a little too deep for those prongs and spears. So yeah, it's like I said, October they'll start moving out. November you can really start targeting good. They just changed the regulations. No more November fishing, which is when we usually have our best. But they're still good December through February, and they're going to run through our inlet out of the pass. You can get them on the jetties there as they're moving through. You can get them right on the edge by our buoys where all the bait fish are. But where we like to target them the most is near shore wrecks. Anywhere from 2 miles, 3 miles offshore. You can get them on the beach.
Was this the same wrecks you had where you almost had the shark eat me up?
That's right.
So
same
you're
wrecks.
getting them on those same wrecks.
Yep, same ones. And I actually watched you guys' show. It's very similar to how he does. You bump around these wrecks, and my rig is a Carolina rig, 12 to 15 inch leader, 2-aught kale hook, and a bull minnow.
All right, now just define a Carolina rig. Where does the sinker go in relationship to that rig? Because we're talking knocker rigs, now you got a Carolina rig. Describe that rig.
Carolina rig is just an egg sinker above a swivel and then a leader attached to your
And
hook.
what pound test leader?
20-pound test.
Okay.
That's what I'm using.
And again, the baits that you're using are what?
My favorite is bull minnows. Now, that time of year, we've got tons of little baby cigar minnows. Those are great too, but everything else likes them. So the bull minnows seem to stay down there long enough for those flounder to come eat them.
Okay, so now you're in a wreck, or you're near a wreck, and you're just fishing the perimeters of it for the flounder, or trying to get tight to it, or what?
The way I like to do it is I like to get right on top of the wreck, and then I drift down current of it. And as soon as I get off that wreck, I'm dropping. And I like to work the sandy areas all around the wreck.
I see. So what you're doing is precision. So as soon as you drift off, you're trying to get that as close to that wreck as possible without snagging, and then working those perimeters in there too.
Exactly.
What about jigging for them with the plastics too? I know a lot of people who do that. I did a show recently with Captain Judd Owens out of North Carolina, and all we did on those wrecks, dropping down little plastics, and we had torn them up that way too. So I guess live bait you feel is advantageous, but could the plastics be a little bit better? I mean,
absolutely. Yeah, you can do the same exact thing. Takes a little more skill to get them that way, but a 1 ounce jig heads, because we're fishing 50 to 65 feet, so I like a 1 ounce jig head and a plastic, or like the big bucktail jigs as well. Put a little swim bait on the back of that. Just bump it real slow. And I noticed too that when I fished with Jot, one of his deals was when you had too much of a drift going, normally like to drift over this bottom and then work the jigs, keep near the bottom, just hopping them. But if the current were too bad, he would say anchor up. And we would anchor and we would spot fish, fan cast, and work a piece of structure. If we caught a few of them or missed a few of them, then that spot was worn. You pick the anchor and go to another piece of structure, throw the anchor, and work it that way when you had that current. And a lot of times you would throw up current to give that jig enough time to hit the bottom and do your soft tops till it started playing, and you restructure or reestablish yourself that way too. But I want to go back to the bridge, because I think that bridge relates to any other bridge, the Gulf side of Florida, and the passes. When or how could you fish those bridges, since that's a traversing zone for these flounder? Where would you fish around those bridges? Groins, the pilings? Tell me a little about that. Our bridges are kind of difficult to fish for flounder right under the bridge, because there's so much structure from the old bridge being torn down. So you're really going to snag up a bunch. You want to go past the bridge and fish the jetties, and the same way there, you can use a jig, or you can use the live bait on the Carolina
mobile, or
rig.
are you anchoring?
I'm a trolling motor anchorer, so
go.
I'm half mobile, right? Yeah.
Gotcha.
I jog around.
Very good. All right, Tom, because I promised we're going to turn you loose on the rigs, and we're going to do that once we come back from this commercial break. We're going to give Captain Mike, especially Gabrielle, a rest on this one here. You're watching the Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series. We're coming right back.
The Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series is brought to you by Atlas Tracks, satellite tracking of recreational pleasure boats, supply vessels, and fishing fleets. Columbia Sportswear, stay cool and protected while fishing. JL Audio, ahead of the curve. ACR, building survival products since 1956. Florida Keys and Key West, visit flakeys.com. George will be right back. Welcome back to the Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series from the IGFA in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Brought to you by Bass Pro Shops and Mako Boats. Let's get right back to George.
You're watching the Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series from the IGFA, sponsored by Bass Pro Shops, Mako Boats. Now, what is your most productive flounder rig?
So we either use cut bait or we use artificial baits. The two most popular types of rigs is, number one, you have a jig, a bucktail jig, or just a round ball jig on the bottom, up about 18 to 20 inches. You have a dropper loop with a hook and a teaser on there with no weight on it. And the most popular things in New Jersey to use are either going straight gulp on a lot of things, or we use cut bait, such as squid, mackerel strips. You're allowed to use fluke belly. I'll tell you exactly what the rule is.
Yeah.
You're allowed to use one fish out of each person's creel as bait, but you have to keep the rack and it counts as a killed fish.
Is the fluke so much of a better bait?
It's a fresh bait. A lot of times you want like a nice long bait, like anywhere in like the 7 to 9 inch range. All right. We also fish, I fish a lot. If I'm using a strip bait like that, I have a small stinger hook just tied up on 50-pound mono. It just goes right over top of the jig hook so that you have a 2-hook system with it, because the fish are the flounder always come up from the back to try to attack the bait, and the first thing they're going to come to is the stinger hook. The second rig is just a very basic chicken rig, where you got a dipsy down at the bottom and then 2 dropper loops above it.
Right.
Where you use either mylar skirts, or you can use, 1/4-ounce bucktails on there and tip them however you like, whether it be a smaller strip of bait or with gulp. And they work very well when you're fishing really seriously sticky structure, like you're fishing concrete, or you're fishing over top of wrecks, or fishing the rail cars where you're busting off a lot of stuff. The bank sinker does not tend to get snagged up nearly as much as the bucktail does.
Okay, what dictates you drifting versus anchor for them, or don't you anchor for them?
I never anchor for them. Yeah. Mostly what I do, though, when we're fishing hard structure like that, I power drift them. So if I cut the boat loose on a drift and I'm doing, 1.2 knots, which is pretty fast for my boat, I'll come back around the structure, get my drift line, come back around the structure, and whether I want to go over top of it or if I want to go to the side according to what we're fishing, and I just start bumping the boat in reverse just to slow her down. And I try to knock it down to like 0.5, 0.7 knots. It seems to be like the right speed for our area of how much current we have.
All right, and those rigs you're talking about, what pound test leader, and then are you fishing mono versus braid, and what pound test?
All my rigs are made out of 50-pound mono for the rig, because even with them stinger hooks, like a big fluke, they got teeth on them, and you get like an 8, 9, 10-pound fish that engulfs the bait down so much, they got some pretty gnarly teeth on them. They can cut smaller, lighter mono, without a doubt. As far as braid goes, anywhere between 15 and 30-pound braid is good. If you go heavier than that, you're just going to have a lot of drag back when you're going to have to use a heavier bucktail. And I tell my guys, if you got to go over top of a 4-ounce bucktail, put it away and put a chicken rig out, because they work better.
All right, here's a very important part, the subtleties. And you hear different people say different things. When you're working artificials down there, as soon as you get that hit, you nail the fish. But then you hear people talk about using the baits that you don't rear right back on there. You hear 2 different schools of thought. So I'm going to open this to everybody here. When you get the tap with a natural bait, what do you do, Gabrielle?
Well, when I was growing up, I heard the saying, when you get a flounder bite, you light a cigarette. When it's halfway done, you set the hook, right? So I can't wait that long. I'm not that patient. I do let them hit it. I'm like a 3. I let them hit that first time. A lot of times they just grab the tail. They sit with it in their mouth. Then I hit it one more time, and that third time, I pull up, I feel some weight, and then I'm going to get them.
All right, Mike, we got about 30 seconds left. How are you doing
I agree
this?
with that. I tell my clients, crank it, don't yank it. And just be real easy on it. You ain't got to try to build dance it or whatever. Just take your time You feel that weight on there and ease them in. And it's funny, 9 times out of 10, when they get a flounder on, I could tell them before they even, while they reeling it, I was like, yeah, you got a flounder. So, but before we go, I got a quick question for Tom before I get rid of it. How long you been flounder fishing?
1983, I guess.
Okay, I got a question for you. I'm in a debate right now. Somebody watching this. Have you ever seen a flounder jump out of the water?
I have.
Oh, I lost the bet.
Yep, I did.
Okay, my girlfriend said she seen one jump out of the water,
Well,
and I told her she was cut
Hey,
off.
now, Mike, for about $500, we could cut this part out of the seminar. No one's ever going to know. I want to thank Gabrielle Barnes, Mike Goodwine, and Tom Daffin for that session. We're coming right back. Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series. There you have it. The Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series will be right back next week with a totally different episode. If you want a chance to win our Super Grand Prize Mako 17 Pro Skiff Center console, powered by Mercury Outboard, enter the drawing at nationalseminarseries.com. One lucky winner will take home this beautiful Mako boat. Best of luck.